2 weeks ago, we posted a list of Xbox games that deserve revisiting and promised that we would look at the PlayStation library at some point. With the PlayStation 5 now out across the world, it's time to keep that promise. Welcome back to GameGentleman. In this week's list, we look at 10 PlayStation titles that deserve revisiting. As with our Xbox list, we've also looked at modern day studios we believe could do these titles justice. We have to admit, this was a pretty hard list to narrow down, as the majority of our experiences over the last 25 years of gaming have been on PlayStation platforms. Before we get started, if you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Number 10, The Order 1886. We started our list of Xbox franchises with the Xbox One launch title, Rise Son of Rome, stating the title had an interesting premise but was let down in its execution and repetitiveness. And much the same can be said about Ready at Dawn's The Order 1886. Set in an alternate history steampunk London, players take control of Sir Galahad, a member of the Order inspired by the legend of Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, tasked with protecting London from both human and werewolf threats. The Order 1886 had so much potential in its setting, world building, and inventive weaponry. However, it was sorely let down by repetitive gameplay, a short campaign with no replayability, and quick time event battles, which controversially are repeated between a midpoint boss battle and the final boss battle. The Order developer Ready at Dawn had previously expressed that they would love to work on the Sony-owned IP again. However, with Facebook buying the studio earlier this year, the chances of that happening are slim to none. Given the expansive open world of Days Gone, Sony Bend would be an ideal studio to unshackle the world of the Order from its narrow, linear roots. Number 9, The Getaway. The Getaway was a third-person sandbox title set in central London and heavily influenced by British gangster films like Snatch and Get Carter. Released in 2002 on the PlayStation 2, the game was meant as a launch title, however was delayed due to the difficulty of recreating the expansive London map in the game's engine. The game centres around two conflicting stories, featuring ex-bank robber Mark Hammond as he's pulled back into the seedy underworld of crime, and Detective Constable Frank Carter as he tries to bring the gangs of London to justice. Players partake in many of the usual open world activities and missions you would expect from a sandbox title like this, and the game featured a map of London which was 16 square kilometres. It also featured licensed car and weapon manufacturers and a focus on cinematics and immersion. The game was subject to a number of controversies upon release, including initially being banned in Australia and receiving mixed reviews from critics at the time. Team Soho no longer exists, dissolving into London studio back in 2002, and with that studio focusing on PlayStation VR titles for the past few years, we would like to see the Getaway series handed over to Mafia 3 developer Hangar 13. Number 8, Heavenly Sword. Heavenly Sword was a third-party PlayStation exclusive developed by Ninja Theory and released in 2007. The game is a third-person hack-and-slash adventure with a martial arts-inspired combat system given some depth through its use of stances to balance range, speed, and damage. Visually and gameplay-wise, the title is comparable to the original God of War trilogy, just with 100% less shouting at the Greek pantheon. Players take control of protagonist Noriko, a warrior who wields the titular Heavenly Sword, which legend states was used to defeat a demonic warlord called the Raven Lord. Noriko must use the sword and her skills to defend her homeland from the evil King Bohan, who wants to rule over all of the world's tribes. Legendary mocap actor Andy Serkis provided the voice and motion capture for King Bohan and acted as the game's dramatic director as well as one of its writers. The title received generally favourable reviews at launch and also saw a prequel animated series just before its release and a CG animated film released in 2014. Game protagonist Noriko also appears in PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. Ninja Theory is obviously now part of the Microsoft Game Studios family, so it's very unlikely we would see them pick up the title again as a PlayStation exclusive. Much like the Xbox exclusive Otogi, which we covered in our previous list, this leaves us leaning towards Bayonetta and Nier Automata developer Platinum Games. Number 7, Ape Escape. Ape Escape was developed by Japan Studio in 1999 and holds a special place in the history of PlayStation as the first title to require the use of the DualShock controller on the original PlayStation console. Players must travel through time to capture and recover apes set loose by the intelligent yet evil monkey Spectre. Players can use gadgets to help capture the apes and must navigate the apes' awareness level indicated by the sirens worn on top of their helmets. Ape Escape was released to critical acclaim and would spawn 2 direct sequels, as well as a host of spin-offs in both Japanese and Western markets, with the last being a PlayStation Move title for the PlayStation 3 in 2010. Given Toys for Bob's excellent work in bringing back the Crash Bandicoot and Spyro franchises, and their recent release of an original Crash game, we feel that they would be the perfect studio to recreate the magic of the Ape Escape series. Number 6. SOCOM. SOCOM is a series of third-person tactical shooter titles spanning across the PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, and PlayStation Portable. The original title, SOCOM US Navy SEALs, was one of the first titles to use the PlayStation 2's network adapter to allow online play and the first game to use a USB headset accessory. In the game's single-player mode, players take command of a 4-man team of United States Special Operative Command or SOCOM soldiers as they undertake missions across the world in locations such as Alaska, Turkmenistan, and the Congo. Players would either use the headset to issue voice commands to their squad or use a series of on-screen prompts if they did not have the accessory. Players could also play multiplayer, siding as a squad of SEALs or terrorists in deathmatch, hostage rescue, or demolition objectives. Development of the SOCOM series was shared between developers Zipper Interactive and Slant 6 Games, with Zipper Interactive developing the final entry in the series in 2011. Rumours of a return to SOCOM have been doing the rounds, particularly in the lead up to the release of the PlayStation 5. Sadly, so far, none of these have eventuated. Guerrilla Games' second team has most often been tied to these rumours, and given the studio's pedigree with their Killzone franchise, we think they'd make a pretty great fit. Number 5. Parasite Eve. Researching for this list, we had no idea that Parasite Eve was actually a sequel to a science fiction novel written in 1995 by Hideaki Senna, which also received a film adaptation in 1997. Parasite Eve was released in 1998 on the original PlayStation and combines elements of survival horror with RPG mechanics. Players take the role of Aya Brea, a New York City police officer who must uncover the mystery of and how to stop the titular Eve, after watching everyone around her spontaneously combust when attending the opera. Ava must uncover why she was also not affected by this attack and what mitochondria has to do with any of this. Parasite Eve combines gameplay elements of titles like Resident Evil and Silent Hill with foreboding atmosphere and limited inventory such as ammo, and Final Fantasy with random encounters and a combat system closely aligned to the recent Final Fantasy VII Remake, combining real-time combat with a more traditional turn-based combat menu, allowing players to make special attacks, use items, or cast magic once a gauge has filled. It's not a stretch to say that Square Enix should keep control of this franchise and use the excellent blueprint of the recent Final Fantasy VII Remake to revive the title. Perhaps even going all the way back to the source material of the novel to serve as both an adaptation and a prequel to the original game. Number 4. Porsche Challenge. So the thought of a racing game centered around a single car may seem odd when we have titles such as Forza Motorsport, Gran Turismo, and even the ill-fated Drive Club continually pushing the graphical and physics boundaries across dozens of manufacturers around the world, but we want you to hear us out. Having a single vehicle or manufacturer in a racing title puts all players on an even playing field. There's no managing whether you buy the best car in a low class or upgrade to have the worst car in a higher class like in other racing titles. Nor is there being beaten by that Pagani in every single race only to have it run like a Camry when you finally unlock it yourself. The engine, drivetrain and suspension are the same across every car, so it's up to the driver's skill and the AI of your opponents. This is where the original Porsche Challenge was actually kind of revolutionary. Not only did Team Soho work directly with Porsche to accurately model the Boxsters which race throughout the title, but they also motion captured drivers to play out unique animations and programmed their AI so that each racer had a unique personality and would drive accordingly, such as being aggressive with the player or taking more risks around the track. Using more advanced AI modelling available today, this could be amplified even further into an almost Nemesis-like system, where NPCs could not only drive according to their personality, but remember the actions of the player and interact accordingly. Additionally, the original game had modes where the track would randomise while players were driving, which could be modernised into a procedurally generated track and landscape map, meaning players could not simply rely on knowing the track inside and out in order to win the race. As this is another Team Soho title like the GETAWAY, we can't just hand them the keys again. So we would like to see this concept be handed over to Gran Turismo developer Polyphony Digital, possibly as a spin-off or expansion of the existing Gran Turismo franchise. Think of it like the Spider-Man Miles Morales of racing games. Number 3. Twisted Metal. Originally developed by defunct studio Single Track, Twisted Metal was an arena-based vehicle combat title in which players would compete until they are the last vehicle standing. Twisted Metal was known for its cast of colourful and crazy characters, with the most notable being the game's unofficial mascot, Sweet Tooth. The story centred around a mysterious man named Calypso who holds the yearly Twisted Metal competition, inviting drivers of all shapes and sizes to compete in these death battles. The winner is granted a single wish with no restriction on its value or impossibility. Twisted Metal premiered at the very first E3 Expo, and the last entry in the series, confusingly also called Twisted Metal, would be shown 15 years later at E3 in 2010. Most recently, in March of 2019, Sony Pictures Entertainment CEO Tony Vinciquerra spoke of a Twisted Metal TV series in development. But we think this game should stay exactly that, a game. While some may say that upcoming PS5 title Destruction All-Stars looks to offer up much of the vehicular combat that has been missing from the platform for the past 8 years, its Fortnite-esque cartoonish appearance lacks that edgelord appeal of the Twisted Metal series. From a first-party studio perspective, if Evolution Studios were still around, they would be our developer of choice, particularly based on their work on the MotorStorm series. However, in their absence, Wreckfest developer Bugbear Entertainment would make a valid substitute. Number 2. Bushido Blade. Bushido Blade came out in 1997 and was unlike any fighting game that came before it, or really has come since. Unlike the fireball throwing of Street Fighter, the juggling of Tekken, or the fatalities of Mortal Kombat, Bushido Blade was slow and methodical. Bushido Blade pits players in one-on-one combat with a variety of weapons including katanas, naginatas, broadswords, and sabers. The game's unique body damage system meant that players could injure or incapacitate their enemies before they'd killed them. A blow to the legs may force a player to crawl, or injuring their arm may impact their ability to strike back, and most importantly, most blows can be fatal. Players can also use the environment to their advantage, freely climbing, running, and jumping through bamboo forests, castles, cherry blossom groves, and more. Players must also fight honourably according to the Bushido Code. Players must not perform dishonourable actions such as throwing dirt in the eyes of their opponent or stabbing them in the back unless they want their game to end abruptly. Bushido Blade was developed by Lightweight Co Limited, who have gone on to make a range of titles from its spiritual successor Kengo to Hello Kitty Cruisers, and most recently XK3 Tower of Destiny for Nintendo 3DS. We'd like to see them come back to the Bushido Blade franchise and fill the gap in the PlayStation ecosystem for a unique fighting game title. Number 1. Resistance. To be fair, this entry could have also been taken up by the Killzone franchise to bring a first-person shooter exclusive title with the capacity of multiplayer back to the system. But of the two franchises, we preferred Resistance for its setting, creature design, and inventive arsenal of weapons. The Resistance trilogy was a series which spanned across the PlayStation 3 generation, starting with Fall of Man in 2006, and concluding with Resistance 3 in 2011. The game also saw spin-off titles on the PSP in 2009 and the Vita in 2012. The story is set in an alternate history 1950s as humanity defends itself against an alien race called the Chimera, which has infected masses of the population, forcing them to evolve into a variety of enemy types and gigantic boss encounters. The original title sees players take on the role of Sergeant Nathan Hale, a US Army Ranger who discovers he has some kind of resistance to the Chimera virus when his squad is ambushed and infected while on a mission to help the UK fight off the invasion. Players can use both period-accurate and futuristic weaponry to fight off their enemies, and the game made use of the 6-axis controller functionality, incorporating motions such as shaking the controller to escape an enemy's grasp or put out flames. The game also featured large multiplayer modes, with the original being able to host up to 40 players online, which may seem small now compared to common battle royale titles, but was significant for its time. The games were well supported by Sony and Insomniac, with dedicated servers to minimise latency and plenty of post-launch map packs. The Resistance series is another one which has seen rumours circulating in the lead up to the PS5, particularly after the official Insomniac Games account tweeted this post in May of this year, but we're yet to hear anything official. Insomniac seem to be on a roll with the Spider-Man titles, and a fully fledged sequel will surely be on the cards. But the developer's second team could easily return to the franchise after the release of the upcoming Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. So that's our list of 10 forgotten PlayStation titles that deserve revisiting. As we said at the start of the video, this was a pretty hard one to narrow down, and there were a lot of great games that didn't make the cut. Tell us why we're wrong and why these classic titles should have been on our list down in the comments below. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with a friend. This has been GameGentleman, and thanks for watching.